Hey there, cats and kittens. My name is Alonda Carter, and I am the Recovering Hunbot. I create anti-MLM videos, that's multi-level marketing, and I'm also dipping my toes into true crime. And when you really think about it, isn't multi-level marketing criminal? So if you like one or both of that type of content, then you might want to consider doing that subscribe thing. Now, today's story, I mean, I really don't know if I characterize it as true crime or MLM. I mean, I really think it's kind of like, a merging of both, because today's story is about a con artist and the things that he did like over 100 years ago. Those tactics are still used today, and they're used in multi-level marketing. Before we get started, I do want to welcome two new patrons. Thank you so very much for your support. Mandy T coming in at the White Oak Bayou level. Thank you so very much for making that decision to support me in my endeavors on creating content here on YouTube. Before we get started with the actual story that I'm going to tell you, I do want to say thank you to two new patrons. Mandy T is coming in at the White Oak Bayou level. Thank you so very much for your support. I really appreciate it. And Maeve H, I'm not so sure if I said your name right, and if I said it wrong, I'm sorry. She's coming in at the Buffalo Bayou level. Thank you very much. Thank you both so much for your support. Okay, now I kind of want to paint a picture for you. I mean, studying con artists, I think, is really fascinating. Way back when, this is back in the day. I mean, you may not remember Blockbuster Video, but I used to go there and I just kind of like walk up and down the aisles and wander about looking for movies that were interesting to me. And I'd pick them up, read about them, maybe I'd carry it around, kind of do stuff shopping. Stuff shopping is when you like carry something or put it in your cart, but you haven't bought it yet, but it's yours just for that time. I know, a little weird. Anyway, I watched this movie called The House of Games, and I think it is such a brilliant movie in terms of showing how con artists operate. So I'm going to give you the premise. And so I guess spoiler warning if you haven't seen it. And if you haven't seen it, I really think you should see if you can find it somewhere. And I honestly, I don't know if it's available to stream anywhere. I just know that I watched this and it's always just like kind of like stuck in my head. Well, here's the thing. There was this psychiatrist and she's making this decision, and I'm basing this off of my memory, so this might be a little bit sketchy and not quite right in terms of what the premise is, so I apologize for that. But anyway, so there she is interested in con artists. And so anyway, the psychiatrist meets this guy, and he's handsome and all of that, of course, got to be a good looking dude. And he's a con artist, and so she decides she wants basically to learn how to con other people. And he takes her, under his wing, so to speak, and he introduces her to his group of thieves, group of con artists, so to speak. And so she gets to observe them setting up these elaborate, schemes along the way. And so she's just like really fascinated by all of this. But the thing that she doesn't realize until kind of at the very end is that she was just a mark the entire time. She was never, they were never like really all on the same team. They were using her, and she thought she was like one of them. So anyway, make sure you check that out. But I just tell you that so that you know kind of like where I'm coming from, that this is something that has interested me, and I wanted to go back in time and look in our history in the US and see, like, is there some kind of con artist, and what tactics did they use that might be being used today, and that connects to how people in multi-level marketing, what they do, the tactics that we see being used, and maybe you used yourself. I mean, I know I did. So let's go ahead and get to that. Most people have heard of the Ponzi scheme, even if they're not exactly sure of what or how that phrase, came into being. The person behind the phrase, the Ponzi scheme, is Charles Ponzi. Now, this story I'm about to tell you is about someone you've probably never heard of. The tactics this person developed, they're still used today by salespeople, politicians, and even marketers. In 1870, New York-born Jacob Simon Herzig came into the world, Later, Jacob would be known by the name of George Graham Rice. Rice was a swindler, and he was able to operate his scheme before the Securities and Exchange Act squashed the type of opportunities that he promoted. On Amazon, a book about Rice, which was written by T.D. Horton, states that Rice operated at the zenith of America's golden age of con artistry with plenty of illicit competition, that he stood apart from all others thanks to the sheer audacity, pure nerve, and nefarious brilliance of his scams. Against the dark rise of American greed in the early 20th century into the roaring 20s, the dapper but devious Gigi feasted on a nation of gullible prey with the flair of circus showman P.T. Barnum, and on a financial scale comparable to modern fraudster Bernie Madoff. He changed his name just as he would frequently change his swindles, to make himself into one of the most imaginatively successful villains in American history. With only $7 to his name, Rice parlayed a chance horse racing tip into millions, lost it all to pride and ego, then won it back again many times. Vilified by securities regulators as the jackal of Wall Street, he sparked riots in Manhattan's financial district by perfecting the art of the bucket shop trade with the sole purpose of bilking the public blind. From the lawless frontier of the gold rush to his lust for dizzying riches on Wall Street, Gigi's supreme knowledge of sucker psychology empowered him to orchestrate everything from street corner ripoffs for pocket change to elaborately scripted gambling hoaxes for hundreds of thousands of dollars, all while being vilified by old guard profiteers like J.P. Morgan and befriended gangsters like Arnold Rothstein. Now, as a young man, Jacob developed a gambling habit. You see, his family had a fur business in the Lower East Side of New York, and he was a really smart guy and just had a way with words. He was able to watch how dice and card games could be rigged, and then he would use those exact same methods to cheat at playing marbles. As he got older, Jacob developed this habit of writing bad checks on his family's business. Eventually, his father had him arrested, and in 1890, young Jacob was convicted of stealing from his father's business. He spent 2 years in the Elmira Reformatory, also known as the Hill. While there, he became friends with an older inmate and learned some of the methods that his friend used. For one, Jacob learned to play on the greed of others. Con men take advantage of the desire other people have. For instance, there's this swindle called the fake gold swindle. Someone buys supposedly stolen gold only to find out it was fake gold. But because they would be embarrassed that they did this, it's really unlikely that they would report it to the authorities. Just imagine that you bought something that was, you were paying less than what it's actually worth because you're thinking, okay, this is the real deal, this is real gold. But you find out you were just taken for a ride. I mean, do you really want to admit that? Our boy Jacob tried on a bunch of different names, such as Abram Herzog, Joseph Hart, and Jack Hornday. He finally landed on the name George Graham Rice, which was the name of his former reform school inmate buddy. The reform school was not George's last run-in with the law. In 1895, he was convicted of forgery and sent to Sing Sing. After he got out of Sing Sing, George moved to New Orleans, where he worked as a reporter at the Times-Democrat. On September 8th of 1900, he happened to be in Galveston, Texas. Now, on that day, the worst hurricane in U.S. history landed. It's estimated that it was a Category 4. Our boy George, though, survived it, and although he was pretty much penniless and without a job. Now, myself, I live 50 miles from Galveston, so I've been through a hurricane or two. I know what aftermath is like, but I'm really kind of wondering, what all did he really experience? I mean, we'll never know. It's not like we can ask him, and even if we could, would he tell us the truth? So George, and yes, he was also known as Gigi, Back when he had been incarcerated, he had read a whole bunch, and this really helped him with his writing. He wrote stories about the Galveston disaster, but it is really unclear how accurate they were. His stories really may have been more of a tall tale. Now, as far as I know, he is one of the only people that had boots on the ground kind of, experience, like he was actually there. Everybody else was doing stories based kind of on hearsay. He did learn, though, from this experience that people are drawn to a clever story, and that a story has selling power. Gigi moved back to New York, and one night he went to the Metropolitan Opera House, and when he was there, he ran into an old racetrack buddy by the name of Dave Campbell. Gigi bought him a drink. And, really, Gigi had nothing really going on, but he had one thing. He had posture and confidence. Now, he made the claim when his buddy asked him about, like, hey, what's going on with the, betting on horses? He said, oh, he was just all done with that. Now, during their conversation, Campbell kind of slipped Gigi a letter from this guy, Frank Mead. Frank was in New Orleans, and he wrote a racing column. And his buddy, Campbell, told Gigi that he could make some money based on what this letter said. When Gigi looked at what was written, he saw that it said to watch a horse by the name of Silver Coin. Meade had a way of coming up with insider information, so Gigi did some quick calculations with the money in his pocket, which was all of $7, and he realized he could turn that $7 into 70. I mean, it wasn't a huge windfall to do that, but it was more than $7. The next day, Silver Coin was in a race, and this made a light bulb go off in Gigi's head. Our boy raced over to the Morning Telegraph, which was just a few blocks away from the Opera House, and he marched up into the classifieds office. With that $7 in his pocket, he was able to purchase a 4-inch one-column space in the country's most widely circulated horse racing paper that said, bet your last dollar on Silver Coin today. At New Orleans, he will win at 10-1. Now, in fine print, it was noted that this was the first and last free horse tip. Anyone who wanted the Bureau's best bets would need to subscribe to a $5 daily tipping service. You see, Rice had created a quote-unquote new company, a new racetrack tip sheet called Maxim and Gay Company. Now, to look legit, Rice rented a small office for his little newly formed company. And, he would receive other tips from Meade. On this particular day, the very next day, he received another tip that was 40-1. It was nearly impossible the following day to make it to the office because the street was flooded with people. Eventually, he and his buddy Campbell did so, but all of that commotion they discovered, it was because there was this long line that led straight to the front door of Maxim and Gay. On this particular day, there was a horse by the name of Annie Lorette, and that was the tip of the day. Before that race started, he and Campbell had sold 551 tips. This netted about $2,755, which would be around $75,000 in today's money. The horse didn't win. It was a long shot, but that taught Gigi a lesson. It would be better publicity to give out a narrowly defeated long shot than an actual winner of a race. By the end of the year, his little venture would be bringing in bank, and it was close to its first million in profits. Rice made an agreement with Meade to create a single wagering proposition daily that would be wired to the home office of Maxim and Gay, which then became known as Maxim and Gay's One Best Bet. His confidence game proved to be a smash hit. Suckers bought his tips each day. Here is one of the tips. Here is your money working while you sleep. Our famous corps of track sharps are up at the break of day, clocking the horses in their morning tryouts, and while you sleep, they spot the winners that bring you steady income. Our methods put you on level with the most successful plungers of the American turf. We operate for you for 25% of weekly earnings. We win only when you win. Results obtained really beyond dreams of avarice. Now, I do want to draw your attention to where it says first week, second week, third week, fourth week. This kind of reminds me of a hall of fame, if you will, that I experienced when I was part of multi-level marketing. I was with Beachbody, and there would be like this, and there would be this success club leaderboard, and you'd be all excited because you would see if you had points on the board. Now myself, I was never really, I didn't really hit that, but I wanted to. People who are doing MLM, they use something very similar to what Gigi did right here. Do you see how that's similar? Now, eventually, copycats sprung up all over the place, and this really made Rice a little bit hot under the collar. He even took out ads warning and accusing others of how they were being swindled by other people. Eventually, his horse tip business was shut down by the post office department. In 1904, he moved to Goldfield, Nevada. Prospecting towns were popping up all over the place at this time. People were looking to get rich by panning for gold. Rice sought to get rich by selling mining stocks. Some credit Rice with coming up with the very first penny stock system. He started a new company called Nevada Mining News Bureau. There were a lot of worthless mining properties, but if he could get the mining engineers to say that they were priceless instead of worthless, and then take out ads in states that were far away, then he figured he could really make some money. Now, something that Gigi was really good at was getting himself some publicity. He would have newspapers write about him and about whatever lucrative business he had going on at the time. He paid people to look busy by hiring workers, renting equipment, and digging shafts. The idea was potential investors and journalists would perceive everything was on the up and up. Our boy promoted various mines, including 4 Acres, Gold Spectre, Bullfrog, Gold Bar, Straight Dog, Jumping Jack, and dozens more for 10, 25, and 50 cents a share. Eventually, the mining business he created had its zenith and then started declining. Once his criminal past was exposed, that's when everything kind of just, dried up, so to speak. Rice sued the Daily Mining Record for exposing his criminal past. From there, Rice moved on to another town called Greenwater, California. There he sold worthless shares of a copper mining company. The site now is part of Death Valley National Park. To quote Money Week, Rice's most notorious scam was his involvement with the Idaho Copper Corporation. In return for being given effective control of the company, he helped promote it by making outdated and exaggerated claims about its potential, as well as heavily tipping it in supposedly impartial newsletters. He invented phony sales to give the impression that the company's fortunes were rising. As a result of his efforts, the Idaho Copper Corporation share price rose 15-fold, giving it a market capitalization of more than $10 million. Today, that would be about $143 million. And that happened by September 1925. Now, our boy George, he made a profit of $1.7 million, which would be about $24.4 million today, and eventually he sold his shares. Complaints from the authorities and local businessmen led to the Boston Curb Exchange suspending Idaho Copper Corporation shares. Rice's response was to sue Idaho's state mine inspector for libel while merging the Idaho Copper Corporation with another company and then relisting it as the Idaho Copper Company, allowing trading in the shares to resume. Rice's libel lawsuit was unsuccessful, and by November 1927, the company had run out of money, forcing it to shut down. A few months later, Rice was indicted for mail fraud and would eventually be sentenced to 4 years in prison. Gigi moved back to New York. He was not part of the stock exchange. He did become part of the curb exchange, which was an outdoor, unregulated market, a perfect place for him to continue scamming people out of their money, those who were hoping to strike it rich. Not only did he buy and sell stocks, he made shifty loans and also bribed public officials. Rice hired a clipping service to look through the daily obituaries and articles about the donations of philanthropists so he could find new marks. He kept a database of suckers, prospects such as prominent philanderer, age 72, gave $100,000 to a college and 3,000 acres of land, supports former mistress who is a Broadway chorus girl. Arnold Rothstein was a racketeer and gambler who became a mob boss for the Jewish mob in New York. Rothstein had a legal team, and that was really super helpful for Rice. You see, when Rice faced fraud charges, this legal team would use what's called the clog and snarl method to bring in reams of confusing evidence and challenge each and every assertion prosecutors made. If one of his schemes ended, he would rebrand it with another one. After the stock market crashed in 1929, Rice landed in the Atlanta penitentiary where Al Capone was. Capone invited Rice to share his cell. After the market crash, it became more challenging to fool people because people were just basically a bit skeptical. Rice's long con came to an end, and there's really not much information about the last years of his life. The Jackal of Wall Street, as Rice came to be known, died October 24, 1943. So what can we learn from Rice? And how do his methods impact us today? And how do they relate to multi-level marketing? All right, now that I've told you the tale about George Graham Rice, now I'm going to share with you things that I saw that were very similar to the tactics that are used in multi-level marketing, today, and that I used and maybe you used as well. Now, if I left something out, if you notice something that I don't mention, make sure you put that in the comments, okay? So the first one is greed. Remember that story about buying fake gold, but you're thinking it's real and you got it undervalued, but you find out that you're ripped off. Well, most people, they're just not going to go and report it. That's the same with multi-level marketing. People buy into the dream of multi-level marketing. And when they find out the fairy tale is just that, it's just this fabricated tale, it sounds really good, but it's actually not the truth. People don't report what happened to them. And companies know that. Companies know that because out of human greed, most people aren't going to say what happened to them. Number two, scarcity. Remember that tip, the horse tip? That was today and today only. So with MLM, often it might be there's a sale, or that you're starting some training the next day, or that you're starting a group, or something's going on where it's pressuring people to take action right now, not giving them any time to think. You don't want to do that. You want them to act right now, this red hot second. The third one is storytelling. Remember, he learned that a good tale is something that sold people. I mean, people want to see themselves as successful. So if they hear a story about someone who rose up to the ranks, they can see themselves and picture themselves doing the same thing. Think about the different stories that people are told while in multi-level marketing. For Beachbody, the national wake-up call, every single time somebody is telling their story. Anytime you go to the conference, people are telling their story, and you see yourself that if they did it, I can do it too. The fourth one is free. Give something free so that people know they can win at this because, they already did, because they already got something that was so worthwhile and they didn't have to pay for it. Now, in the instance of Beachbody, oftentimes it is like the free group. That's what I did. I had all these different free groups where I'm giving value for free. They also tell you your social media posts, you're offering value. You're always offering value to people so they can see how wonderful you are, and eventually they'll take action. The fifth one is to show winners. Remember how he was showing like all these different people, their earnings? Well, it's the same thing in multi-level marketing. I think about the Success Club points, and I would see people who are actually able to, sell challenge packs. And I thought, well, if they could do it, I could do it. Also, the people who would rise in ranks on the national wake-up call, they would give you all these different names of people who would rank advanced. And so you think, well, I can do it. You can see people are doing this because you have proof. You have social proof right in front of you. The sixth one is to throw around accusations. Somebody else is actually the swindler. And by pointing fingers at someone else and deflecting from whatever's going on what you're actually doing, that way you legitimize yourself. Now, I will tell you this has especially happened to me on YouTube. I have Huns come at me basically telling me that I'm the scammer. I've been accused of being a scammer for exposing scammers. I'm not really sure. I can't wrap my head around how they're able to leap to that. And oftentimes people will say that about my Patreon, that, basically, well, you're marketing, you're scamming people, you're doing the same thing. And it's really, really very, very different. I mean, do you know what the difference is? If you do, put it below, because they're vastly different. And this is not the time or place for me to go into the differences, but I just wanted to bring that up as an example. Testimonials. You gotta let people see that others have had success. Think about all the sales pages you see. Think about, the people who have joined a multi-level marketing company and they're, telling their story. They're invited to speak. You get the testimonials of like others were able to do this. And if somebody else was able to do it because they're telling their story, they're saying, yes, I was able to do this. They're providing that testimonial. Maybe you see something in print and that makes you think, I can do this. If they can do it, I can do it. The eighth one is to shut down critics. Remember how he sued someone for speaking out and bringing out his past? Well, you know what? That's what people in MLM love to do, is try to shut down their critics. Myself, I've especially experienced that from the Magic Bro bots. They've done so many things to shut down the videos that I have done, exposing how they get people to go to a webinar and sell them a course, and that course actually leads them to join the MLM called Magic. Anything they can do to try to shut down anybody who's speaking out, they will try to do it. The ninth one is self-promotion. And in today's world, it might be an ad. It might be that you're having a press release. It might be that you're going somewhere and somebody's interviewing you. Maybe you even paid someone to do that, all to legitimize yourself. You can also get shout outs from Cameo. You can get someone like Grant Cardone, and yeah, he's kind of associated with MLM, but there's different stars you can get to shout you out if you pay them. And if you get that shout out and people see that on social media, they're going to think, oh, wow, you know this person, so you got to be legit. I should take action. I should join you. And the very last one, the 10th one, is the prospect list. Remember, Rice had people going out and looking at obituaries and looking at what philanthropists have done most recently. And he kept that list. It's the same thing of that list of the 100 people that you know. Now, I knew there was no way I was going to be able to include all the details of Rice's life. T.D. Thornton wrote a book about George Graham Rice, and it's available on Amazon. I'm hoping to be able to bring T.D. on here as a guest. I've reached out to him, so we'll see. But I think it would be really fascinating to talk to someone who's done research on con artists and written about them. So what do you think? Do you see some parallels with what, our boy Gigi did with multi-level marketing? Let me know in the comments. And also, does it make sense that all of these different things that, I talked to you about, all these tactics, that how they're interwoven into the American DNA culture? Do you see that? And can you think of anything that I left out? If so, let me know in the comments. And, maybe I didn't get something quite right. I did the best that I could with all the research. That's why I hope to be able to bring TD on, because, I really am fascinated by these early con artists. Thank you so much for your time. Make sure you hit subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever makes you happy, ring the bell, all that stuff. And remember, change starts now.